Hi, everybody, and welcome back to our SFC podcast. I'm Zoo, your host, and today we have Andrew. Andrew is a strategic finance pro from Robinhood. I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. My name's Andrew, and as Zoo said, I'm working in strategic finance at Robinhood. Previously, I spent about a year and a half working at DoorDash, also in the strategic finance team, and prior to that, was working at a Series B startup, also in strategic finance, but also in BizOps, and starting out my career in investment banking focused on financial restructuring and distressed or special situations.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. So I contemplated having Andrew on the podcast. He worked at DoorDash, as somebody from Uber. That's generally, we're not friends, but we still decided to have him on. Andrew's also an investment banker. As most of the viewers watching this, we've helped a lot of investment bankers land roles in StratFin roles. So I guess, Andrew, for you, like, what was one thing that made you want to move from investment banking to strategic finance, and what are some tips right off the bat that you may have for some of our viewers?
Yeah, so I think that people who are in investment banking that are looking to switch into StratFin already have the smarts and the modeling skills. But beyond that, I generally think that StratFin teams have a huge emphasis on hiring people who can show that they're scrappy and can also collaborate well with cross-functional partners. And so questions to ask yourself, like, can you be scrappy and show that you can, working on maybe super ambiguous tasks or maybe needing to use a really unconventional method to get to an answer. And then also, can you work with non-finance partners in different teams across things like engineering, product, sales, or marketing? A lot of people in investment banking or PE don't have much exposure to working with people who are maybe not as well versed in finance. And so that's something to think about.
Got it. Yes, that's absolutely right. Right. Like I've interviewed hundreds of bankers and folks from PE, and they sometimes either don't have that experience or just lack to like tell a story that can showcase that they have that experience or they're ready to hit the ground running. What's a good example at Robinhood? Like working cross-functionally, is there a team that you work closely with? And then do you have like a mini sort of like story that you might be able to share with us on how you work cross-functionally with, one of the teams at Robinhood?
Yeah, so I just joined Robinhood just a couple of months ago. And so I think a better example to use would be at DoorDash, where I worked
Sure.
on deal desk for my team. And this was during a time of, high competitive pressures from Uber. And I worked on over 50 deals in just a few months and played a big role in securing new merchants along with retaining existing merchants already on the platform. And this included many S tier merchants in the US, like think the McDonald's, Burger King's, Chipotle's of the world. And on this initiative, worked pretty much across the company from product to operations to the sales team, going back and forth through negotiations with each of these merchants, and then thinking about different growth initiatives with the operations team that we can implement to maybe make things a little bit sweeter for us from a top line and volume perspective, while also aiming to preserve our margins as well.
Got it. And what kind of like friction or pushback would you typically face with some like an example like that while you were working through those?
Yeah, so there's always going to be cases where cross-functional partners just have different priorities. That's just the nature of how companies work. And so in
Yep.
particular, like with sales, right? Like sales is just focused on closing the deal. And they are a lot less focused on economics and the bottom line, whereas we on finance, that's to an extent all we care about. And we understand that there is a trade-off between top line growth and bottom line bottom line preservation. But for the sales team, typically, they really just care about that top line volume.
Yeah, it's always an interesting balance that we got to do as StratFin pros. Um,
Yeah.
Taking one step a little back, what while you were in investment banking, what sort of like triggered or what was the catalyst for you to make that jump from sort of an advisory or professional services role into a very core and I'm going to be biased here, one of the most fun operating roles at a tech startup.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that is the exact motivator for me, is having an interest in learning what it's like to actually be on the insides of a company and how to push it further operationally, rather than just looking at them from an external lens like I did in banking. And I feel like when you're in a Stratfin position, it just allows you to dig in that much deeper and really get in the weeds. And you're working on so many different initiatives across the company that have a real tangible impact. Whereas in banking, you kind of like just move on to the next company after your project that usually lasts like, I don't know, like 2 to 3 months maybe.
Yeah.
And so you're allowed to just focus on one thing and just go that much deeper.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. Definitely one of the main reasons that I made the jump too. Did you get what you expected? I know you spoke a little bit about DoorDash, so we can talk about DoorDash or even Robinhood if you want. Like, did you achieve that sort of I'm going to feel and work like an operator? Did you get that? Because some folks sometimes they'll make the move from IB and maybe they'll go into a corp dev role or they'll go into a corp strategy role that's super focused on M&A, and then
Yeah.
maybe they they don't get that pure like operator feeling. So did you get that at DoorDash and currently now at Robinhood?
Yeah, I think 100%. I think we work so closely with our strategic partners across the business, across different verticals, that you're just involved in so many areas where you truly are essentially an operator and while being a strategic advisor to these teams as well, where you really are almost like boots on the ground, operating this company and really trying to push it to become better and more efficient.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so that's obviously great to hear. I personally, when I first joined Uber, my first project was a very tax-heavy project. It was all about pricing and tax, and I was like, "Am I going to feel like an operator?" But then within 5 to 6 months, and I was like, "Okay, now I see it. Now I feel it," and so that was great. What's one skill you think that you either needed to develop outside of banking or in your transition from banking to StratFin, especially if it comes around data or things like that?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of data, um, I think like learning SQL is something
Right.
that I had never seen before, never even thought about before. And then I joined these companies and they have massive databases that you need to know how to use SQL to be able to utilize properly. So that was fun, but thankfully, the companies that I joined had small crash courses on how to use SQL and navigate. So that was one more kind of like hard skill, but I would say the main soft skill is what I've been, mentioning multiple times so far, but it's that cross-functional partners and being able to work with them. It really is just like a different dynamic when you're working with these people rather than, working with your VP or your MD when you're working in investment banking.
Okay, cool. Let's talk a little bit about SQL. How was that learning experience? And how important is it for, folks, not only from banking, but from consulting or accounting or, maybe even traditional FP&A? How important is SQL before landing one of these roles?
Yeah, so I think in terms of how is the learning curve on SQL, it was pretty steep, but in this day and age with, Google and ChatGPT and all these resources, it is definitely quite smooth. Um, and it isn't the most difficult, and you also don't need to know it at a very proficient level, but just have a basic understanding. And I found that that has been enough to, get me by. Um, but in terms of knowing SQL beforehand, I think a lot of Stratfin teams see it as a good to have, but not necessarily a requirement. Um, and I do find that knowing the basics is very helpful within the job because, yes, you can leverage your data teams internally, but if you just need to make a small tweak or adjustment to a query, it's really great to be able to do that yourself and not have to ping someone and then wait for them to get back to you and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. My SQL skills have now started to come down, but I remember when I was like writing query, we didn't have ChatGPT, so I was always bugging the person next to me. Um, but it definitely sped up a lot of the things that I wanted to do. I know sometimes I was like, oh, like I'm just curious about, like this information or this pricing information, or can I build like a quick correlation? And so once I felt comfortable, like you said, like you can pull it yourself, and then once you maybe have a basic query and you want to get it more complex, it's time to maybe pull in something from data or analytics.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
cool. I got maybe one awkward question. What's something that you don't really like about strategic finance? We spend a lot of time saying why it's great, why it's a lot of fun. What's something that maybe you don't really like, or maybe viewers should like think through before they start applying for roles?
Yeah, so not every project or initiative that you work on is going to be the most interesting, or as the example that you gave earlier, does not feel like you're working as as a strategic operator or partner. There is always some level of, FP&A reporting type things involved in every one of these roles. And in my opinion, it isn't the most exciting work, and it can get monotonous at times, but I do understand that it just has to be done. And I also recognize that there's still great things to learn from these work streams. And oftentimes it can lead to more exposure to senior leadership depending on, what they're focused on. For example, during earnings, it seems like all they care about is reporting and results and things like that. So um, it is sort of like one of the things that like a bit less about strategic finance, but nonetheless still find value in it. And it's not unenjoyable.
Right. Yeah, I guess it's just part of any role, right? Where you may be put on some projects that going to utilize either your expertise or your modeling or some sort of like quant skills. You get pulled in, or subbed in, and it might not be like the most like this is one of the sexiest projects, but still kind of has to be
Yeah.
done. I've built a lot of relationships through those kind of projects, especially when you get pulled in because like either someone's like talked about your skills or they're aware about what you can do, and then you get looped in. Let's talk a little bit about Robinhood. I know you're only there for the past 4 months. How are you liking it? It's Robinhood's obviously been around for a little bit, but yeah, let's talk a little about how the role is, why you joined, how it's been the last 4 months.
Yeah. So far it's been really good. A big positive that I found is the people that I'm working with made the onboarding experience super smooth, and everyone's very nice and helpful. Um, And I find that I am spending more of my time on these strategic initiatives and really feeling like an operator where I feel like I am boots on the ground, and I am doing things that have a very tangible impact and high visibility. Um, and more broadly, like the company, I think is in a great position, well positioned for growth. We just launched our web trading platform, which looks amazing. And
Okay.
also continuing to innovate. Like I think we just announced yesterday or the day before that we're introducing event contracts on the platform. And so this is sort of like a first of its kind for a brokerage where you can essentially place you can buy contracts on what you think the outcome of an event will be. And the one that we introduced it with is the presidential election happening in a
I was
couple
gonna say
weeks.
makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
Oh,
So
that's really interesting.
it's
So I know Kalshi does that as well. But so this is the first time you're seeing like a brokerage is actually doing it, yeah?
exactly, yeah. Like you can probably find things similar to this on like gambling websites and stuff, but this
Yeah.
is a little bit different.
Wow, that sounds super fun. I'm gonna have to take a look at it. I'm not on Robinhood myself. My wife is though. That's how she began her whole investing and trading journey. And we sort of like let her keep doing that. I feel like it's also educational. I know we're getting close to time. Just maybe one or two more questions around tips for some of our viewers. what are some tactics that you maybe utilized in your interviews to showcase to folks that you do have this incredible like financial modeling and which came from the banking background, but that you're ready to take on an operational role? Like, how are you able to convey that in your interview?
Yeah, so I think this is very dependent, obviously, on what types of deals that you had worked on during your time in banking. But I think as an investment banking analyst, there are typically opportunities where you can work with the company and folks internally within the company. Um, and that can range from people within their finance teams, but it can also stem to other verticals as well, maybe product, sales, or operations. Um, and doing those things early on in your investment banking stint could set you up very well for a potential stratfin opportunity down the line where you can, speak about these things and can differentiate you from other investment banking analysts that are competing for the same position. And so that is something that I leveraged during my analyst stint. And working in restructuring, we were very close to the details in terms of the operations of the business. And so I luckily had a leg up against other people because of that.
Okay, awesome. That is very, very useful. Andrew, thank you very much. We appreciate your time. I'm sure this is going to be very useful to our viewers. And yeah, I appreciate you being here. Thank you very much. We'll see you soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
See you later.